Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're going to cover the whole entrepreneur. That's the purpose of this podcast, of course, but I think a unique episode. I have a very special guest with me, and we're going to talk about publishing, entrepreneurship, and intimacy, all wrapped in the same little bow of this episode. And I'm just a huge fan of this because I always argue that you can't have a successful business if you don't have a successful and happy life. We're going to walk down that path today with my special guest, Melissa Keenan. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So you are a publisher, you have a publishing company, you are an intimacy expert, and you have a wild, unique, very interesting backstory. Tell me, how does all of that weave together to bring us to this very conversation today?
Yes. So I actually was a stay-at-home mom for 9 years and struggling a lot in my marriage. So I didn't start out as a business owner. I was trying to be a good wife and have a happy life and be a good mom, and consistently struggling in that endeavor. And our marriage was struggling a lot. And so, I'm grateful that we chose that as a path for our family initially, because it did give us the time to work out the issues that we had in our marriage. But, ultimately, addiction, typical fighting, typical stuff that everybody deals with. The reality that we came to was that neither of us knew how to be in deep, connected, secure relationships. Like, we hadn't seen it modeled before. We hadn't. The more work that we did on ourselves, and thankfully I chose to do work on myself, my husband chose to do work on his self. So that allowed us to continue to draw closer together. We kind of got to this point, and I remember exactly where I was sitting and everything, where I was like, oh my goodness, this connection that we have is like, I didn't know it existed on the planet. I didn't know it could be like this. And my husband felt the same. And so that's where kind of the little seeds began to plant for me to move into the coaching field and, become certified in many of the different modalities, which had helped us to get to the point where we were at, and opened a coaching practice. So I ran my intimacy coaching practice for the past 6 years. And it was about, 2021, that I utilize and leverage the opportunity of becoming a published author to grow my coaching business. And I did this through a multi-author book. And I loved the experience so much. I was like, wow, this is, for one, it's like a coaching program with no one coaching me but me, because as I went through and I just wrote a chapter for a book. I went through my own transformation experience. I was like, this is really cool. And then it opened and leveraged all these different opportunities for me as a coach, because I became more credible in the industry, and I now could call myself a best-selling author. And I now had this really cool group of the co-authors around me to collaborate and work with, and et cetera. But it wasn't until 2023 when I started to actually consider maybe I should be a publisher. It was furthest from my brain. Like, how do you go from being a stay-at-home mom to being a publisher? Because publishing, you have to know a lot about business and things. But I felt I had gotten to that point, and I was like, I love this process and experience. And the more I considered it, I realized it's not all that different. Supporting an author through the journey of visibility with the world through their work is very similar to supporting an individual through the journey of visibility and being deeply seen and known in their relationships and even with themselves, which was what I was very good at. So now I run a publishing house and an intimacy coaching practice. And here we are today.
That is quite the winding road, right? But I want to dive into that because there's so much to unpack on the business side of and being an author for your business outside of the having a publishing company. I'm curious though, when you were first at the first part of your journey, you said you and your husband, you had a lot going on in your marriage. How did that show up in real life? Because I think that's the piece I'm curious about, and that's why I like to bring this out on this show. Because a lot of times, and we had talked about this offline a little bit, you have a successful air quotes person on paper, but their personal life is falling apart. And it's, for me, it's like a rubber band, right? Or a yo-yo. It's only a matter of time before, if there's dissonance, one side catches up with the other. So on the outside, what was your life like at that time?
It's such an interesting question because I mean, as I reflect, I feel like a lot of marriage issues, and I saw this again and again with clients too. A lot of marriage issues stem from the fact that I was at war with myself. And so, whether it was regarding my friendships or my relationships with my children or my family or etc., like I actually wasn't happy in any of those areas. And, of course, our journey was such that I didn't open my business doors until we had moved through a lot of that. But, business brought on this whole other dynamic, all these elements of and obviously we come from a more traditional background, hence me having been a stay-at-home mom. I feel like we're pretty progressive now, but that's not where we started. But conversations about oh my gosh, I just made more money than you made in the last 6 months. And now how does that affect our marriage? And there's so many dynamics when, you have both partners working, or you have one partner in particular who's a business owner who's has an unlimited income earning potential or leadership potential, or you're both running business together. There's just so many elements there. I cannot imagine. I mean, I can, I guess, because I've worked with clients, but for us personally, if we hadn't already gone through that deep inner work, how we would have handled those challenges.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And I guess maybe to your point, I'll share this story. This was just the beginning of last year. We're kind of at a stuck point, and we're looking at finances. We're looking at our 5-year plan, and we're kind of we're just feeling really stuck. And my husband's feeling super heavy, even church stuff. There was just a lot of stuff that was we felt very stuck. And I reach out to one of my good friends who had been a previous coach of mine, and I'm sharing with her stuff is really real right now. It is hit the fan over here, and my husband is super struggling, and I don't know where this is going to lead us. Not that our relationship wasn't rocky, just everything else. And my friend says to me, Melissa, work on your marriage. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's the only thing that's going well. We are at bliss when we are with each other, but unfortunately we can't run off into the clouds together. We have to do all this life stuff. And she said, why don't you just take my word for it? Take a risk and do what you've been telling everybody else to do. Use your most valuable asset now to change the rest of your circumstances. And so we did. And we invested in this year-long, crazy, amazing coaching experience where we went to a retreat in person with them, and we did all this stuff, invested in our marriage, and every element of our external life changed. And I was like, oh my goodness, because obviously I would have told someone to do the same thing, but maybe I didn't believe it at the depth to which I believe it now.
That's really interesting. Eat your own dog food, right? That's where the saying comes from. But I want to unpack that a little bit, because that's actually counterintuitive to what most people would would even suggest or believe. Like if I was in that situation and you told me to do that, I'd be like, Melissa cray cray, I don't need to listen to her right now because she's on off the reservation. What is it about kind of doubling down on, in this case specifically, your marriage that caused the rest of your life to bloom into what it is?
Well, and I think some of what brought us to that decision even was like we had invested in so many different business coaches and like all this other stuff and been so frustrated. like um kind of looking for something outside of us to be the answer for the next step for us. And instead we just chose us, which built us the confidence within ourselves individually, because marriage work is always about, you have to work on yourself first, always. But we built the confidence within ourselves and within us as a partnership that we're actually now doing this really cool business acquisitions program, and just like it's stuff that we were stuck around before. Like my husband used to say, like, you know what, we've tried too many times, we can't possibly work together, there's no way we could run a business together and stuff. And now we're like on the ground actively doing a business acquisitions program together and stuff, like because everything we do is motivated internally first. So you can't, and it's about intimacy is my work, right? Like that's who I am. And I define that as into me see. And so the more that I come in tune with who I am, with my unique desires, what lights me up or turns me on, however you want to say it, like what really like makes me feel full and whole as a human being. And as my husband does the same, obviously we're going to have greater bliss in our marriage, and we're going to create more amazing things in our external environment around us. So that's what we've experienced.
No, I think that's a really interesting journey. And like I said, when you expand on that and you say it's about going within yourself first, that's not necessarily a new concept, but that's kind of the byproduct of working on your marriage. So you went self, marriage, life kind of happened as a byproduct. I love the journey. And first of all, I love your willingness to share it. I think that's amazing. And more people could probably benefit from that too. Do you see this in your clients who are business owners? Is that a common path for people who have this, maybe the word dissonance comes up again, this dissonance in their business life, or in their personal life? Does it affect their business? And then when you resolve it, does it resolve the business too?
I wish that life was so linear. Wouldn't
I
that
do
be
too.
great?
It would be so much easier.
Unfortunately, I have not been able to say there's such a direct cause and effect, but you will always be better for investing in yourself. You will always be better for investing your time and your resources and everything into your own internal growth. It's so individual, right? Because if you have a brand new business owner and then they go drop 10K on a coach who's going to teach them like about I don't know, take them on a bunch of plant medicine journeys or something about their spiritual development, like they're not going to have any of the ground rules to run a business. And so there's that kind of piece of like, you can't just meditate a successful business into your life, or like sit with your sage and think you're going to create a successful business. But like if you are in motion and you are doing the things and you willingly say, I am willing to carve out time and space to devote to myself and to devote to my marriage, it will always result in better results with everything else you're doing in your life. And our American culture for sure doesn't get that. It's like, just work harder, always just work harder, like make less time for your marriage and definitely don't take time for yourself. Just drink coffee and run faster. And that's like you reach, I think every successful business person reaches a level of success. I'm not going to be able to remember the phrase there's a coined phrase like the law of, I can't remember it, but it's basically like you have given so much, it doesn't matter if you give 10 times more than what you're giving, you're still going to produce the same result. So you have to work differently. You have to start working smarter. You have to start like investing in yourself and really like coming from a different place and being more about the vision, because you can't just keep spinning your wheels faster. It's not even creating greater results. And so a lot of the work that I would do with people was just helping them slow down and carve out space and time for what brings them joy. I mean, it seems like that's not rocket science, but when you're actively doing it, when you go and you sit down and you turn on the TV at noon when you're normally like, because you want to watch your favorite show, and that feels like the ultimate self-care, and you're used to actually answering 50 phone calls at that time. Like, people face tremendous guilt in those moments, or you're making time for your spouse or your, whatever, like, there's a lot of internal yuck that we have to sort through to get to a place where we recognize, oh, this is actually probably the best thing I could do for my business. And I still battle with that in my own brain. Like, I'll wake up in the morning with my to-do list, and then I have to go, okay, do I actually want to go tackle that to-do list right now? Or would it be better for me and for my business in the long run if I go make my favorite breakfast and I go out and spend time with my bees and my beehive and et cetera, et cetera?
That's amazing. I think what you're referencing is the law of diminishing returns.
Thank you. You got it. You did
That's
it.
actually, I love that you brought that up, because that's what we talk about with our clients. So we're focused on the business and ops side, and we have just found that it's about the 7-figure revenue mark where that really comes into play. And the first thing we do with our clients is regain 50% of their time in the first 90 days of working with them. And they always hate us. They push back on it, and they're like, no, I have to keep going. I have to work harder and harder and harder. And now I know that you're just a phone call away, because I don't say it as eloquently and probably as kindly as you do, but that it's so true that we are conditioned to work harder and harder and harder. And the harder you work, the less you get. I love that you brought that up. So in this journey, though, why not continue down the intimacy expert path? Why go publishing? What prompted that shift for you?
Yeah, I love that question. Well, and part of me wants to say something to what you just said too. Can we just go back for a
No,
second?
I'm here to ask the questions. You get to say whatever you want.
Awesome. You said that they hate you because you are like, no, 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 change the way you're doing your time. And so often what happens when we slow down like that is all of a sudden our relationship issues are in our face and we can't ignore them anymore. And then we feel like, well, I have to fill this with something else. And that's why so often, like, even as you grow as a business owner and you begin to replace yourself through, your employees and your team and et cetera, and you find yourself, it's like that was going to create time and space for me to do the things I love. But suddenly I'm finding myself even busier because you commit to new things to fill up space, because it's hard to just be still, to be with our feelings, to be with, like, actually, we haven't had sex in a long time, or actually, like, every time we talk, we fight, or, and just, it's like, I think what people don't realize is your marriage is the biggest vessel for growth, like, always. And if you're not in a partnership and you're listening to this, it's like, it's great, but truly, it's like you now have double the growth. You now have double the intensity of emotions too. But I think maybe there's not enough said to that, and what do we do with those uncomfortable feelings when we actually do take the leap and make the space, and all of a sudden we're like, no, there was a reason I was moving this fast.
Yeah,
But it's all
absolutely.
healable. It's really all healable. It is.
And
Yeah.
I think that's encouraging for people, because I think one of the biggest diseases that is not spoken about in, I would say, this country, but also throughout the world, is the inability to be still. And
Mhm.
it causes chaos. It causes stress, anxiety, and it causes this hamster wheel that we all find ourselves in, trying to grow our businesses and do more at the same time. So Yeah, I love that you bring this message to the world, and I hope more people hear it, honestly, because this is the stuff that more people need to hear. You can see that just visually, you are more relaxed than most people who come onto this show. And I think
Oh,
if that
thank
says
you.
something, it should say everything about the work that you have done.
Thank you so much. I like actively, my day is structured that I work 3 to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. My 4 kids are homeschooled, and we spend the rest of the time like playing a lot. That's my life. And people might hear that and say, that sounds like a hobby, not a business owner. But it's, again, well, try it.
Yeah, it's also the rules are defined by you. The business you build is defined by you and nobody else.
Yep.
So
Yep.
tell those people to shut it. I want to say something else, but this is a PG relatively show, so I won't say that.
Them. Oh, come give it a try. That's right.
Melissa is much kinder than I say things, and that's probably why her clients listen a little faster. Melissa, this has been fantastic. Where can people go to learn more about you and all the work that you're doing and have done?
Yes, head over to melissakeenan.com or heartopenpublishing.com. Both of them take you to the same place. I do have a free gift there, and it's called I have 2 free gifts over there. One is called the Intimacy Guide, and that takes you into a deep process with yourself around relationships and guides you to share what you discover in a relationship. There's also the Story Code Activation Guide, and that takes you into an intimate process with yourself and your story so that you can begin to kind of explore what it is that you would write about if you decided to also publish your own work someday.
Very cool. That's awesome. For those of you watching and listening, it's in the show notes down below, so you can go check that stuff out. Melissa, I can't let you go without asking the last and most important question, and it's a question from you. So we believe powerful questions get powerful answers, hence the obnoxious lit up question mark behind me. But the question is, or what I want you to provide is for the audience, for someone listening to this whole episode. We went all over the place. And it was a beautiful episode with a lot of gold nuggets. But what do you want someone to ask themselves in reference to this conversation so that they can take their life, their business to that next level that they're seeking?
That's so cool. I really love this. When you sit still and you find that discomfort, I guess the question has to come with a little bit of background, a little bit of explaining. The discomfort is there to guide you to something different, to guide you to a more beautiful experience of your life. It gets there saying you were made for more. Whatever is happening that's causing all this inner turmoil or inner war with yourself, like it's actually invitation to make change in your life. And so my first question is, will you try to be more still? And my second question is, when you do, will you get curious about the discomfort that's there? Just be with it. Just get curious about it. What is it seeking to reveal to you? Because it is the path to your happiest life.
That's awesome. I love that. I hope you, as the listener, will take that, work on it, reference the giant obnoxious question mark, and question what makes you uncomfortable in your own life. Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
For those of you watching and listening, again, the websites, all that fun stuff down in the show notes. Go clickety clack around. Go visit Melissa and her website. Also subscribe. We want you back on tomorrow's episode. We put out these episodes every single day of the week because we're a little bit crazy, but mostly because we want to help you build a more harmonious business and life.